The fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across the dining room. Mr. Thompson, his face ruddy from the claret, chuckled at something Whitmore had said. Eliza, her eyes bright with amusement, raised her glass in a silent toast. The scene was one of warmth and conviviality, a stark contrast to the chilling events that were to follow. The year was 1888, and the old manor house was steeped in history, its ancient walls whispering tales of bygone eras. The air hung heavy with the scent of roast beef and candle wax, a comforting aroma that did little to dispel the underlying sense of unease that had settled upon me. I watched as Mr. Thompson, a stalwart man of business, engaged in lively banter with Whitmore, his solicitor, and Eliza, his lovely ward. Eliza was a vision of youthful beauty, her laughter like the tinkling of silver bells. Her presence brought a touch of sunshine to the gloomy old house. Little did I know that her light would be so cruelly extinguished, snuffed out like a candle in the wind. The dinner proceeded without incident, each course meticulously served by the aging butler, whose sombre demeanour seemed at odds with the gaiety of the occasion. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by bursts of laughter and the clinking of glasses, but I felt a growing sense of foreboding, a creeping dread that something was amiss. A sharp rap on the door shattered the jovial atmosphere. The butler, his face ashen, presented Mr. Thompson with a silver tray bearing a single ominous telegram. The merriment ceased abruptly, a palpable silence descending upon the room. I watched, my heart pounding in my chest, as Mr. Thompson's face paled as he read the message. His hand trembled as he clutched the telegram, his eyes wide with alarm. A hush fell over the room, broken only by the crackling of the fire and the frantic ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Eleanor, her laughter silenced, reached out a hand to comfort her guardian, her brow furrowed with concern. "Bad news, I'm afraid," Mr. Thompson said, his voice strained. "I must leave for London at once." He looked at Eleanor, his eyes filled with a mixture of concern and determination. "It's imperative that I attend to this matter personally." Harrison, his face etched with worry, rose from his chair. "But surely it can wait until morning," he protested. "The roads are treacherous at night, especially in this weather." Hargrove stepped closer to the fire, his face illuminated by the flickering flames. "It's madness to venture out in the dark," he insisted, his voice low and urgent. "The moors are treacherous at the best of times, but tonight—" He trailed off, his eyes darting nervously towards the darkened windows. Mr. Bennet, however, was resolute. "I appreciate your concern, Hargrove," he replied, his tone brooking no argument. "But this matter is of the utmost urgency. I cannot afford to delay." "But what of Eliza?" Hargrove pressed, his gaze shifting from Mr. Bennet to the young woman, who sat silently, her face pale with apprehension. "Surely she cannot be expected to accompany you on such a perilous journey." "I have no choice but to take her with me," Mr. Bennet said, his voice softening slightly as he turned to Eliza. "It is not safe for her to remain here alone." The carriage lurched violently, its wheels struggling for purchase on the muddy track. The wind howled outside, a mournful sound that sent shivers down my spine. Ilara, her face pale in the flickering lantern light, clung to Mr. Thompson's arm, her eyes wide with fear. They had been travelling for what seemed like hours, the horses' hooves drumming a relentless rhythm against the silence of the night. The only other sounds were the creaking of the carriage and the occasional groan of the wind as it whipped through the trees. The moon was hidden behind a thick blanket of clouds, casting the landscape into an impenetrable darkness. The air grew colder, the silence broken only by the rhythmic clip-clop of the horses' hooves and the creaking of the carriage. The driver, a burly man with a face like weathered leather, muttered to himself as he urged the horses onward. Mr. Thompson, his face grim, peered out the window into the darkness. "We should be nearing the crossroads soon," he said, more to himself than to Elara. "From there, it is but a short distance to the village." The crossroads loomed before them, a tangle of dark branches silhouetted against the night sky. As the carriage slowed to a halt, a figure emerged from the shadows, his features obscured by the darkness. Eliza gasped, her grip tightening on Mr. Thompson's arm. "Who goes there?" the driver challenged, his voice gruff. The figure stepped forward, and Eliza could see that it was a man, tall and gaunt, his face hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. "Just a traveller seeking shelter from the storm," the stranger replied, his voice low and rough. He gestured towards the carriage. "Might I trouble you for a ride to the village?" Before either Mr. Thompson or the driver could respond, a voice rang out from the darkness behind them. "Evening, gents," the voice said, cheerful and familiar. "Need a hand?" Relief washed over Mr. Thompson. It was Jack Handyside, a harmless local known for his rambling stories and penchant for strong drink. "Jack, thank heavens!" Mr. Thompson exclaimed, his voice betraying his anxiety. "We seem to have encountered a fellow traveller seeking shelter." Jack ambled into the circle of lantern light, his jovial demeanour faltering as he laid eyes on the stranger. "Don't believe I've seen your face around these parts before," he said, his voice laced with suspicion. The stranger remained silent, his hand disappearing into the folds of his long coat. A sudden movement, a glint of metal in the darkness, and then a deafening explosion shattered the night. The carriage lurched violently as the horses reared in terror. The carriage shuddered to a halt, the horses whinnying in fear. Smoke curled from the barrel of the stranger's pistol. He stood for a moment, a dark silhouette against the night sky, then melted back into the shadows as quickly as he had appeared. Mr. Thompson scrambled out of the carriage, his heart pounding in his chest. "Isabella!" he cried, his voice hoarse with terror, but there was no reply. He rushed to the other side of the carriage and flung open the door. Isabella slumped against the seat, her eyes wide and vacant. A dark stain bloomed on her chest, spreading like a macabre flower. Her hand, still clutching her reticule, fell limply to her side. Mr. Thompson gently lifted her from the carriage and cradled her in his arms. Her body was still warm, but the light had gone out of her eyes, leaving only a chilling emptiness. A nearby physician, summoned from his bed in the dead of night, could do nothing but confirm what Mr. Thompson already knew. Eliza was gone. Her life, so full of promise, had been brutally cut short. The authorities were baffled. The stranger, despite a thorough search of the surrounding countryside, was never apprehended. Whispers of highwaymen and vengeful spirits circulated amongst the locals, but no concrete evidence ever came to light. I returned to the manor, my heart heavy with sorrow. The silence was deafening. The dining room, once filled with laughter and light, now seemed shrouded in an impenetrable gloom. I could almost see Eliza, her face pale and drawn, her eyes wide with terror, forever frozen in the moment of her death. The nights were the worst. That was when the whispers started, faint at first, barely audible, like the rustling of leaves outside my window. But as the days turned into weeks, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. One night, unable to bear the torment any longer, I crept down to the dining room. The fire had long since burned out, and the room was plunged into darkness. As I stood there, listening to the whispers swirling around me, I felt a cold hand on my shoulder and heard a voice, soft and low, whisper in my ear. It was Elowen's voice, and she was asking for my help. The truth, more horrifying than any ghost story, slowly unravelled. Elowen's death had been no random act of violence. It was a carefully orchestrated murder, planned and executed with chilling precision. And the mastermind behind it all was none other than Mr. Thompson himself. The telegram, the stranger, even Jack Handyside's timely arrival had all been part of his elaborate scheme to eliminate Elowen and inherit her fortune. Driven by greed and a lust for power, he had sacrificed the one person who had ever truly loved him. And now, Elowen's spirit, unable to find peace, walked the halls of the manor, seeking justice for the terrible wrong that had been done to her. The haunting of Elowen had only just begun.